For Harold, mornings had become a quiet negotiation with the mirror. He no longer expected to like what he saw. Just not hating it felt like a win. At 75, the soft curve of his belly wasn't just a physical change. It had become a symbol of resignation. The once proud body that had lifted beams and climbed ladders now moved slower, padded and swollen in places that made him feel unfamiliar to himself. Harold never talked about it, of course. It wasn't his style. He made a few jokes here and there, called it his grandpa gut, or said it was his built-in cushion for the recliner. But late at night, when he tried to button his favorite jeans and found the waistband folding over, a quiet embarrassment crept in. That part he didn't say out loud. He'd tried before. Diets with fancy names, books that promised flat in 5, even supplements that claimed to target belly fat specifically for men over 60. Some of it worked, for a while. A pound here, a belt hole there. But the moment he stopped tracking every bite or forgot to take the pills for a few days, the weight came back, faster, heavier, and more discouraging than before. Then came the comments. Never cruel, just casual enough to sting. His daughter suggesting elastic waist pants for comfort. The doctor gently reminding him about abdominal fat and heart risk. His old friend from church mentioning how Harold had filled out since retirement. None of it malicious. But every word planted a seed of doubt, and maybe the hardest part wasn't the belly, it was what it seemed to represent. Slowness, fragility, a soft slide into invisibility. He used to be the strong one, the one who carried groceries in one trip, the one the kids climbed like a tree. Now, he felt like the background. "I guess this is just how it goes," he once muttered, folding another shirt that didn't fit right. That sentence stuck in his mind. Not because it was dramatic, but because he believed it. He stopped trying, stopped weighing himself, stopped reading the labels. Not out of rebellion, out of fatigue. It was easier to adapt to the belly than to fight it. So he did what many do after a certain age. He made peace with the belly. Or at least he told himself he did. But then something unexpected happened. Something small. Something no one would have paid attention to. But that changed everything. It was a sunny Saturday, the kind of morning Harold usually enjoyed. His granddaughter, Sophie, was visiting, and she loved taking photos of everything. Breakfast, the cat, even Harold dozing off in his recliner. That day, she snapped a quick photo of them together after lunch. Nothing posed, just a simple click. Harold smiled, half distracted, thinking nothing of it. Later that evening, Sophie handed him her phone, giggling. "Look at this one, Grandpa. You look like a sleepy bear." He chuckled and took the phone from her, expecting the usual goofy moment. But the screen showed something else. A man with rounded shoulders, a slouched back, and a belly pushing visibly through his shirt. His smile looked tired. His eyes were heavy. And for a second he didn't know who he was looking at. It wasn't disgust. It wasn't shame. It was a quiet jolt of unfamiliarity. That man didn't match the one Harold still felt like inside. The one who fixed fences, who laughed loudly at barbecues, who danced with his wife in the kitchen back when the kids were little. This man looked worn down, dimmed, out of sync with the version of himself that lived in his memories. He handed the phone back, smiled at Sophie, and said nothing. But that night, he couldn't sleep. The image played in his mind over and over. It wasn't just the belly. It was everything. The way he stood, the slump in his chest, the dullness in his posture. He realized he hadn't really seen himself in a long time. Mirrors give you fragments. Photos give you truth. That moment didn't come with music or dramatic vows. Harold didn't start running or throw out all his snacks. But something softened. The idea that this is just how it goes no longer felt like an answer. It felt like a question. A challenge, almost. He didn't want to look like the old man in the photo, not because of vanity, but because that wasn't who he truly was. And he wondered quietly whether his body had been trying to tell him something. Maybe it wasn't about fighting age. Maybe it was about listening to it in a new way. The next morning, he still had the same belly, the same clothes that didn't quite fit, but something had shifted. He was more awake. He noticed the way his knees ached when he sat too long, the way his skin reacted to salty foods, the way he felt lighter on days when meals were simpler. And then his wife did something so small that he almost missed it. A change on his plate. Just one vegetable he hadn't seen in a while. He didn't know it yet, but that quiet adjustment would spark something bigger than any diet he'd ever tried. The problem with most diets is that they assume you're still 35. They expect your body to bounce back, your metabolism to cooperate, and your energy to stay steady through calorie cuts and food restrictions. But after 70, especially after 75, everything changes, and no one talks about it. Harold had tried those diets. Low carb, high protein, low fat, even a juice cleanse once, which left him weak and cranky for a week. Each one came with the same promise, quick results, and sometimes he did see a shift, a smaller belly, a looser shirt, but always at a cost. His energy would drop, his knees would ache more, he'd get cold easily, and most of all, he felt alone at the table, meals turning from moments of joy into silent calculations. How many grams of this? Can I eat that? He found himself skipping lunch just to make dinner fit the plan. At that age, food isn't just fuel. It's comfort, memory, connection. It's soup that reminds you of your mother, bread that tastes like Sunday mornings. And when a diet strips all that away, something deeper is lost. Not just weight, but joy. And then there's the biology. Older bodies hold fat differently, especially around the belly. Hormones shift. Muscle mass naturally declines. Digestion slows. It's not laziness. It's nature. And restrictive diets can make it worse. Cut too many calories, and the body starts using muscle for fuel. Lose muscle, and metabolism slows even more. Harold didn't know the science at the time. He just knew how he felt. Tired, heavy, unmotivated. He didn't want to spend his last decades obsessed with portion sizes or chasing the approval of a scale. He wanted to live, fully, joyfully, with food that felt like food, not punishment. So when his wife started adding new vegetables to their meals, he didn't question it. He was just happy to see color on the plate again. Fennel, beets, leafy greens, foods he hadn't tasted in years. She said it was for variety, but secretly she hoped to help him feel better. The amazing thing? It worked, but not in the way diets promised. There was no rapid weight loss, no dramatic change overnight. Instead, his digestion improved. He started waking up less bloated. He felt less stiff in the mornings. He didn't need an afternoon nap every day. And then one day, his belt tightened, without him doing anything special. Just eating real, nourishing food that worked with his body, not against it. Have you ever felt weaker or moodier on a strict diet? Maybe you pushed through, thinking that's just part of the process. Or maybe, like Harold, you quietly gave up. Tell me in the comments. Because what if the problem was never your willpower, but the plan itself? There was no grand plan, no checklist, no fridge makeover, no from now on speech. It started simply with lunch. Harold's wife, Ruth, had always been the quiet kind of wise. She'd watched him over the years, his attempts, his frustrations, his silent surrender. She never pressured him, never teased, but she noticed the sighs after a heavy meal, the way he rubbed his belly absent-mindedly, the way he'd avoid the mirror while brushing his teeth. One day, she decided to tweak lunch. Nothing drastic, just added a side of roasted carrots and steamed spinach next to his usual grilled cheese. He didn't protest. He actually liked it. The sweetness of the carrots balanced the richness of the cheese. The spinach melted into a garlicky softness that reminded him of dinners from long ago. That small addition became a habit, then a rhythm. Soon his plate always had a few new colors: cucumber slices with lemon, shredded beet in salads, celery sticks with hummus in the afternoon instead of crackers. Ruth never called it healthy. She never made a big deal. She just kept it going. And something curious began to happen. 3 weeks in, Harold noticed his belt was one notch tighter, but not because he tried. He felt lighter after meals, less bloated. He didn't need to unbutton his pants after dinner. Even his morning stiffness had eased up a bit. At first, he thought it was a coincidence, a lucky week, but the changes stayed. He wasn't eating less. He wasn't moving more. The only difference was what kind of food was making its way onto his plate and how it made him feel. These vegetables weren't fat burners. They weren't exotic superfoods flown in from across the world. They were common, humble, often overlooked, but together they supported his digestion, reduced inflammation, balanced blood sugar, and surprisingly kept him full in a gentle, lasting way. For the first time in years, Harold wasn't dieting. He was eating, fully, peacefully, joyfully. And his body was responding, naturally, slowly, but meaningfully. What's more, these meals began to change how he saw himself. Not as a man trying to lose weight or get fit, but as someone who still deserved to feel good, to feel capable, to be proud of the body he had, and how it was still willing to heal, even after 75. That's when Ruth told him what she'd been doing. "Just some old vegetables your grandmother used to cook," she said, smiling. "I thought they might help." Harold chuckled, but he felt something stir, a quiet sense of hope, maybe even gratitude. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't chasing change. It was finding him, on his plate, one veggie at a time. It was a small moment, but it stuck with Harold. One afternoon, he stood in the kitchen staring at the pantry. He wasn't hungry, just bored, restless. He reached for the crackers like always. But on the counter sat a bowl of freshly cut celery sticks, sprinkled lightly with sea salt and a touch of lemon. He took one, then another, and then he walked away from the pantry. Celery wasn't new to him. It had always been part of soup, or maybe served with peanut butter at his daughter's house. But he'd never seen it as anything more than filler, until now. What Harold didn't realize is that celery carries something powerful for older bodies. Structure. That crunch you feel? It signals your brain that you're eating something real, something substantial. And after 75, when appetite can feel unpredictable and cravings often come from habit more than hunger, that texture matters more than ever. Cravings, especially the late-day kind, aren't always about taste. They're about sensation, something to chew on, something to satisfy a restless hand or mouth. Celery offers that, but without the heaviness, without the guilt, without the sluggishness that comes after chips or crackers. Even more, celery is rich in natural salts and minerals that hydrate the body gently. As we age, we often drink less water without realizing it. Dehydration can sneak up, disguised as hunger. A few sticks of celery can actually calm the nervous system, reduce water retention, and quietly help reset the body's hunger signals. For Harold, this new habit became a silent weapon against mindless eating. He didn't need willpower, he just needed a better option, a satisfying option, one that left him feeling clean instead of guilty. He began to notice something else. His belly wasn't as tight at night, his hands weren't as puffy in the morning, his face looked a little less swollen in photos, all from something he once thought of as garnish. And perhaps most importantly, celery became more than a vegetable. It became proof that small things, especially the things we dismiss, can quietly undo years of bad habits, without fanfare, without punishment. It's easy to believe that belly fat needs something dramatic, but sometimes it needs something simple, something crunchy, something that reminds your mouth that you're still here, still active, still choosing. So Harold kept the bowl of celery on the counter, every afternoon, not as a rule, but as a gift, a quiet one, a green one, a crisp little nudge back to feeling like himself. There was a pattern Harold had grown used to. Eat lunch, feel fine, sit for a while, and then, by mid-afternoon, the tightness would come. Not pain exactly, but pressure. His belt felt snug. His stomach pushed forward like a balloon someone had gently filled. By evening, his shirt clung just a little too close, and he'd end up loosening his waistband before dinner. He called it old man bloat, brushing it off with a laugh. But quietly, it made him uncomfortable, heavy, stuck. Even when he hadn't eaten much, the swelling came anyway. That's when Ruth added something new to his plate, fennel and cucumber. At first, Harold thought it was just a prettier salad. Long slices of pale green cucumber, delicate shavings of fennel, dressed lightly with olive oil and vinegar. But after a few days, something unexpected happened. The bloating stopped. It wasn't a dramatic overnight change, but it was steady. His belly felt softer, flatter, not pulled tight like a drum. He stopped unbuckling his belt after meals. He moved more easily after dinner. Even his naps became deeper, more restful. Cucumber, with its high water content and gentle cooling effect, helped reduce internal inflammation and flush excess sodium from his system. And fennel? That was the real surprise. Traditionally used for digestion, fennel seeds and bulbs carry compounds that relax the gastrointestinal tract, ease gas, and support smoother bowel movements, all essential for seniors dealing with slower digestion. But the magic wasn't just physical. The act of eating something fresh, cooling, and light brought a kind of psychological relief, too. No heaviness, no regrets after meals, no dread of the slow, bloated ache creeping in later. This simple combination also brought flavor. The crisp bite of cucumber against the slightly sweet, anise-like flavor of fennel made Harold's meals feel more alive. He started requesting it. "That green one, the one that feels like a breeze," he'd joke. And that's what it became for him. A breeze. A quiet easing of the pressure he'd accepted for years. It wasn't about weight loss, not really. It was about lightness, movement, comfort. Sometimes, change begins with noticing what shouldn't be normal, like the way you feel after a simple lunch, like the pressure you've convinced yourself is just part of aging. Fennel and cucumber didn't transform Harold's body overnight, but they gave it space to breathe, to move, to let go. And once he felt that space, inside and out, he didn't want to give it up. Harold never imagined spinach would have anything to do with strength. To him, it was the soggy side dish from childhood dinners or the cartoon food of Popeye. It certainly wasn't something he associated with energy or with feeling alive in his own skin. But one morning, after a week of having spinach sautéed with garlic and olive oil alongside his eggs, he noticed something different. He stood up from his chair without pushing on the armrest. His legs felt solid, not young, but steady, grounded. It startled him. For months he'd gotten used to the slow rise, the leaning forward, the little grunt of effort. That day it just happened. Smooth, quiet. Spinach was doing something inside him. Not magic, just support. His body was responding. Most people think muscle is built in the gym. But after 75, muscles are preserved at the table. That's where spinach comes in. Rich in plant-based nitrates, spinach helps improve blood flow to muscles, making them more efficient and less prone to fatigue. It's also full of magnesium, which supports nerve function and muscle relaxation. Two things the aging body craves. Harold didn't know the science, of course. He only knew he felt less stiff in the mornings. He walked a bit longer without tiring. His legs didn't tremble after going up the steps. And slowly, something powerful began to return. Confidence. He started standing taller, his chest more open. His movements lost their hesitation. His grandson even noticed. "You look different, Grandpa," he said, "like you're walking faster." Harold just smiled. He hadn't meant to. It just happened. And meals became a moment of quiet power. He wasn't counting protein grams or taking muscle supplements. He was just eating spinach, softened, seasoned, satisfying. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But the spinach helped him feel like he could. There's something sacred about reclaiming strength when the world assumes you've lost it. Not through machines or miracles, but through real food. Honest food. Food that gives more than it takes. Spinach didn't turn Harold into someone new. It helped him reconnect with someone old, someone he hadn't felt in a while. Someone firm, sure, capable. That's why he kept eating it. Not because a doctor told him to. Not because a diet demanded it. But because his legs told him thank you. His arms moved easier. His back stood straighter. His body responded with quiet gratitude, meal after meal. And for Harold, that was more than enough reason to keep going. Harold had always had a soft spot for sweets. Not cakes or candy necessarily, but those little comforts. Cookies after lunch, a spoonful of jam on toast, sweetened coffee in the afternoon. They weren't indulgences, they were rituals. And after 75, rituals become even more sacred. They fill quiet hours and soothe emotional creases. But what Harold didn't know was that these small, sweet habits, innocent as they seemed, were quietly working against his belly. Not just adding extra calories, but raising his cortisol, the stress hormone that encourages fat storage right where he didn't want it, the midsection. Then came the change. Ruth, once again, without lectures or fuss, began roasting carrots in the oven. Just a drizzle of olive oil, a sprinkle of thyme. She'd plate them next to Harold's sandwich or serve them warm with dinner. Alongside them came strips of roasted red bell pepper, their edges caramelized, their insides tender and naturally sweet. Harold's reaction: this tastes like candy, but better, because it didn't leave him heavy or sluggish, just satisfied. Carrots and red bell peppers became his go-to sweet fix, not as a punishment for skipping dessert, but as a reward that his body could actually use. Both vegetables are high in beta-carotene and vitamin C, nutrients that help lower inflammation and regulate stress hormones. When cortisol drops, so does that stubborn belly resistance that keeps fat clinging like a shadow. More than that, these veggies calmed his cravings. He noticed fewer snack attacks in the evening. His desire for sugary treats faded, not from willpower, but from real nourishment. The kind that tells your brain, you're safe, you're full, you're okay. That emotional safety was key, because Harold didn't just crave sweetness in taste, he craved it in life. Warmth, ease, comfort. These veggies gave him that, without the crash, without the guilt. And they gave him results, subtle but sure. Less puffiness in the face, a slimmer waistline that he noticed when tucking in his shirt. The old sugar belly was softening, quietly releasing its grip. This wasn't about being perfect. Harold still had his sweet moments, birthday pie, the occasional ice cream, but he no longer needed them daily, because carrots and peppers had taken their place, not just in his diet, but in his story. They weren't just side dishes. They were a new ritual, a new kind of sweetness. One that fed him, not just his hunger, but his hope. Harold had always considered sleep to be a mysterious thing. Some nights he'd fall asleep as soon as his head touched the pillow. Other nights he'd lie there staring into the dark, his mind humming with forgotten tasks, old memories, or no reason at all. And more often he'd wake up around 3 a.m., restless, warm, a little breathless, then struggle to drift off again. He chalked it up to age. That's just what happens after 70, he told himself. You sleep in pieces. But deep down, he missed the kind of sleep that felt like a full stop, the kind that carried you away and brought you back feeling lighter. Then Ruth served something different one evening. A warm beet salad, sliced, roasted, and tossed with olive oil and lemon zest. Harold almost pushed it aside, unsure of the earthy flavor. But one bite turned into two. Then the whole plate was gone. It was sweet, grounding, oddly satisfying. That night, Harold slept through. One night became two, then three. No middle-of-the-night bathroom trips, no staring at the ceiling. Just deep, uninterrupted rest. He felt it in his body the next day. Clearer thoughts, steadier steps, less morning fog. And over time, he noticed something more. His belly felt different, less inflamed, less stubborn. His pants slid on easier. Beets, it turns out, are more than just colorful. They support liver function, which helps clear toxins from the body, something that becomes more important with age. But, even more critical, beets naturally boost nitric oxide, which improves blood flow and oxygen delivery throughout the body, especially at night. Better circulation means better rest. And better rest? That's where the real fat-burning magic quietly happens. As we age, poor sleep often leads to increased cortisol and disrupted blood sugar, both of which encourage the body to hold on to belly fat. But when sleep returns, deep, real sleep, the body can finally release. Harold didn't know the science. He only knew he felt more alive. He started walking with a bit more spring. He smiled more easily. His eyes looked brighter. And all of that came, unexpectedly, from a route he'd never paid much attention to. What surprised him most wasn't the weight loss. It was the peace, the calm, the feeling of finally being rested, truly rested, after what felt like years of shallow nights. Beets didn't just slim his belly, they gave him back his nights. And with them, his days. He kept asking Ruth for that red stuff at dinner. She smiled, knowing exactly what he meant. Because when something this small makes this big a difference, it becomes more than food. It becomes a quiet gift you give yourself again and again. The moment Harold truly understood what had changed wasn't in front of the mirror. It wasn't even the day he reached for his old jeans and they fit without effort. It was on a quiet Sunday, walking to the park with his grandson. They weren't in a hurry, just two people strolling, talking about birds and clouds and school lunches. But partway through, his grandson looked up and said, "Grandpa, you don't get tired anymore." Harold didn't say much in return, just smiled. But inside, something swelled, because he had gotten tired, often, quietly, in ways he never mentioned. Not just in his legs or his back, but in his spirit, in that heavy feeling that creeps in when you start to believe your best days are behind you. When you tell yourself change isn't possible anymore. But now he wasn't just lighter in body. He was lighter in the ways that mattered more, in his presence, in his patience, in how he showed up. And no, it hadn't come from pills or rigid plans or punishing workouts. It came from 7 vegetables, 7 simple, living things that worked gently, consistently with his body, not against it. They cleared his bloat, calmed his cravings, restored his sleep, supported his strength. But most of all, they reminded him that his body was still listening, still responding, still healing. He didn't have to force anything. He didn't have to start over. He just had to care, in small, quiet ways that added up. Now, when he sat at the table, he ate without fear. When he dressed in the morning, he didn't avoid the mirror. When he walked with ease. And when his grandson reached for his hand, it wasn't to help him, but just to be close. This journey wasn't about numbers on a scale. It was about reclaiming a relationship with his body, his meals, and the people around him. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real secret. Not fighting age, but feeding it wisely, with warmth, with kindness, with food that honors the life still pulsing through your veins. Tell me in the comments, which of these vegetables do you already eat or want to try now? Because sometimes the smallest changes become the most powerful gifts, and maybe it's time you gave one to yourself.